Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. Hope you're having a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here, and I wanted to talk to you guys about and continue our progression in the video series line of all the different heads. And today, we're dealing with the Head of Torment. So the Head of Torment is one of the coolest looking ones, if you guys want my personal opinion. But I wanted to step out of our normal style of handling looking down at the breakdown of the list and then incorporating. I want to get in house, get in house. Let's get active, right? Now we are in the middle of a rotation right now that isn't as ideal in terms of seeing the Head of Torment spawn first. So we kind of had to beat our way into it, and I am doing this on normal just to show you a demonstration of what to look for and what to expect. With that being said, let's do a breakdown of what he's got going on. So the Head of Torment has Spectral Jaws. He attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a fear debuff for 2 turns. This debuff cannot be blocked or resisted. Something to keep in mind. After the first attack, attacks all enemies under fear or true fear debuffs, right? In addition to that, he has his second ability, which is called Cursed Storm. It attacks all enemies, and damage increases by 25% for each debuff an enemy is under. So, giving us a little bit more damage, or damage intake, and then also kind of controlling us in a sense with fears, right? That's kind of a little bit of a nuisance, right? Now, his passive is Almighty Torment. When attacked by enemies under Perfect Veil, he places a True Fear debuff on them for 1 turn. This debuff cannot be blocked or resisted. Another key thing to watch out for. Decreases the damage taken from poison debuffs. Once again, one of our early game debuff-based damage outlets is becoming a little bit less stronger in this regard, and also, he decreases the damage all Hydra takes from AoE damage attacks by 10%. And everything else, like we said before, in terms of damage from enemy max HP, War Master, Giant Slayer procs, or from HP burn itself, is at a much more restricted amount, right? Additionally, he's also immune to any hard CC like stuns, sleeps, provokes, etc. You kind of see the list here for you to break down. And as well as any type of HP swapping effects or turn meter reduction type effects are also things that they are immune to. So it's pretty much kind of like a commonplace you see, like turn meter manipulation in terms of reduction doesn't work here. Thankfully, at least turn meter boosting for yourself does work, so you can still use that side of the turn meter reduction or boosting or manipulation in that regard for your favor. But with that being said, the main thing that you have to watch out for this guy is that he fears. Basically, once you tap him, he makes you scared, right? What that does, you have a 50-50% chance of basically a flip of the coin of whether or not you're gonna basically lose a turn or lose a turn with your cooldowns also being jeopardized too, right? So that's a bit of an issue. Now, when does it happen? Well, anytime you attack him without Veil, you can see that even my Duchess, she had block debuffs on when she attacked, it still went through. It can't be resisted or blocked, right? That happens, right? Now, if you so happen to have a champion that, for the lack of better words here, I'm just going to go ahead and cycle into this. I am going to put the A2 up, so she's going to get it as well. We'll A3 here so we can speed up the team, particularly our Duchess, right? We'll try to avoid a little bit of too many fears in play here. Go ahead and do this too as well. Might as well. Nobody to have to control yet, so we'll go ahead and avoid that. We'll just do a little bit of damage on one of the easier targets to hit. Remember, we talked about Mischief, right? But here we go. We have somebody that's under fear right now, right? If I try to use that ability and it didn't work, that means he got stopgaps, right? Now let's see. We did get the veil off for everybody, and you notice how she has a fear, right? So this is not a good representation. I'm gonna try to see if we can get our hands on maybe our Vizix, or better yet, this is a perfect example. You see how our Razelvarg, if you look, he doesn't have any debuffs on him. We'll be able to hit the ad, or the Head of Torment, and we don't get the fear, right? So Veil, like how we read it earlier, any enemies that are not under Perfect Veil, they're able to get around that whole fear mechanic, which is very, very ideal, right? Same thing with someone like Geomancer, he's not under it. If I were just to AoE, we'll just go ahead and AoE here just to showcase this. He doesn't get the Veil, he doesn't get the fear, excuse me, because he has Veil on. So that's one of the great ways to kind of manage this guy. You want to avoid, losing opportunities to get your control. Maybe, the Head of Mischief is about to get his turn, and, I needed that block buffs to go up from our Umbral Enchantress, for example, and because she had fear, she missed that opportunity, and now he's going to go ahead and steal some buffs, and that's not what we want to happen, right? We want to maintain control. Control is always the name of the game when it comes to dealing with Hydra. So, as a result of that, having Veil in play was very valuable for us, right? I am going to propose to you guys an alternative route. As a matter of fact, we'll do 2. In terms of examples of ways that you can get around it, well, what way to kind of like similar to how we handle the Head of Wrath with Geomancer. Why not take that mechanic and flip it on its head? Let's use it to our advantage, right? And no one better than this guy himself. Inquisitor Shamail is one of the best to do it. And the reason why is that whenever an ally receives a fear or a true fear, so he covers both options, he instantly removes the debuff and fills the ally's turn meter by 15%. Now, there's a caveat here. There's actually a bug. I don't know if this is intentional or if this is a accident or it's an actual issue. Inquisitor Shamail, he does not fill the ally's turn meter by 15%. He fills the ally that is in the lead role's turn meter by that percentage, right? The same is also true with how he does it. He counterattacks it with his A1. So whenever a debuff is placed on an ally, he uses this skill against the enemy. So basically, fear gets put on after you do a hit. He removes it instantly and counterattacks and ends up hitting him. So you can get some extra damage on while completely mitigating the factor of fear being at play in this entire environment, right? So Shamail being one of the better ones, he is known as the guy that addresses Torment. That's Himothy right there in a nutshell. This guy right here takes care of that entire mechanic and just completely removes it. And matter of fact, he uses it to his advantage, right? So, and taking a negative and turning it into a positive, that's him. Right? Now, we will talk about what we showed earlier in terms of the value of something like Veil. Now, I'm going to talk about one of the most OP champions in the game. She is meta for in-game content, whether that's, you know, dungeon progression in hard mode content, or better yet, even in Hydra in the higher sides. Duchess is one of the best to do it. And here's why. Well, one, she provides everybody with Veil, block debuffs, increase attack, so she's enabling the team to go. And then she provides a shield with her A1, so you get a lot of value there, right? And yes, I understand that there's a lot of people who may not have the gear I have, so you may have some issues where some of your champions are, you know, they may take a look, like maybe you're using Razavard in your composition. He's just a little too squishy, and he ends up plopping over, right? Well, rest assured, Duchess has that Spectral Rebirth, right? Which not only gives you that revive, but also the Veil on top of that. So getting that perfect Veil, getting those Veils so that you can attack the Head of Torment without any duress, any issues about being feared, she does that for you. In addition to that, she also has that mitigation from AoE attacks by 25% and 15% respectively when it comes to bosses. So since we're talking about Hydra specifically, 15% is pretty much the norm. Then on top of that, the gift that keeps on giving in Duchess, she's an ally speed in all battles by 19%. So nothing wrong with going faster, right? Now, she may not be as acquiesceable as other champions in the game, and I completely understand and I completely respect that, right? I like to give you guys some options. I like to talk to, when it comes to like an alternative to someone like Duchess, I always bring up a champion that I consider to be like a mini Duchess, and her name is Rector Draft. Rector Draft does the exact same thing, albeit at a much weaker level, but she provides perfect Veil, she provides healing, which is something that Duchess only does whenever she's reviving people. She only puts through a continuous heal. So there's a little bit of value of avoiding death altogether, right? Decrease attack, which is actually valuable. You heard how we talked about the Head of Wrath. If in case you did have an AoE, you know, decreased attack, maybe that Mishinaki you were using, you know, that we use in examples all the time. Maybe you didn't land that properly. You know, maybe he had a missed hit somehow, or you know that poison cloud was on him and then it went down, and now it's Rector's turn. You know, all of her other abilities on cooldown. Maybe getting that A1 off from her gives you that value, right? So she's doing good there, right? Then when it comes to the actual Torment head itself, that perfect Veil, that continuous heal to keep your team going, very, very ideal. And then in the same breath of when you have you know, oh no, one of my champions were a little too fatigued and they end up getting hurt there, that revive, turn meter fill, and then the perfect Veil on top of that, meaning that whenever he does get his turn, the passive is going to kick in from Rector, which is going to heal anybody that is under a Veil. Basically, a good pick me back up. Giving turn meters so that they have a chance to have their turn so they can get that reestablished, you know, control, or that reestablished, you know, efficiency of whatever they're doing, whether it's damage or control, right? She provides all that for you, which is really, really good. In addition to that, too, she also increases the resistance of allies that are under Veil or Perfect Veil. So maybe you are running a champion that is your Mischief tank, for example, or you're slightly low, you know, you have them under decreased attack, but your resistance wasn't a focus in your build, so you may be a little bit less there than the ideal number you're looking for. Well, because she just puts Veils in there, you get an extra 50. Just like that. It's really, really good. Now, I won't lie, the aura that she provides is only relevant for Doom Tower, so for the sake of Hydra conversation, it's not really ideal that you put her in the lead role. But I mean, she does have that gift if you so happen to want to use her in other areas of the game, right? And to top it off too, she's pretty fast for an epic. You know, 109 is not bad for a base speed. You know, 17k HP, you know, 1.1k defense, that's actually not bad for an epic. You know, she's actually, you know, if you built her high survivability, high sustain, very, very fast, she's going to enable your team to keep it going, and you'll be able to cook and cook and cook, and eventually you may not even have to rely on that revive at all, you know? She's keeping your team going, right? So those are some examples of some champions that could do it. We talked about the Veil. We talked about how you can incorporate someone who benefits from, fears being placed on your team in Shamael, but why not just straight up cleanse it all together? Now, you'd have to tune this up. You have to be very careful with how you rotate into this, but you could have someone like Doom Priest, for example, who could go at the top of the turn or at the end of the turn, where whenever she gets her turn, she's going to cleanse everybody by one random debuff. And if you only have that fear up there in play and, everybody else is doing all right, maybe they got block debuffs in play from like your Pythion or your Duchess, for example, or any other champion that does that for your team, depending on your comp, she would also be able to only manage that fear that you have to worry about, which does go through that block debuffs, right? So this is where an area such as, Doom Priest or her other counterpart, which we'll show in a second, or her alternative better version is what I'll say, shines at, right? Because as soon as she gets her turn, she's not only healing your team, but she's cleaning that debuff. And then even if it's not so happen to be Torment, right? You got Torment down and you're dealing with another head, she provides that little bit of like cleansing, maybe from Blight, getting an extra poison off, or some kind of mechanic that you would need to address from like a debuff standpoint, right? So that passive from Bolster on Doom Priest is very, very ideal. She also enables the team here with increased attack. If you want to be a little cheeky with it, although it's not really the best of options in terms of damage outlet, we saw how like poison has reduced damage efficiency. You could maybe put her in like a set bonus in Toxic to maybe get a couple extra little bit of damage out, right? Or you can maybe use her as a utility route, although like I said, it's not ideal. You can maybe have her in that curse set so that whenever she does single target hit somebody, you can get the extra hex off, or provoke for that matter, trying to adjust the head of decay. Maybe have her A1, the head of provoke. Or the head of decay, so you can get that extra chance to provoke if you need it, There's various different ways you can build her up to help her enable your team, right? And cleansing is basically what I'm trying to approach giving you guys an answer towards here. Someone that can cleanse, right? And we talked about her better counterpart is what I like to say, Tahanarak. Being able to cleanse one random debuff or two debuffs if their allies are under continuous heals. She does that, right? She also addresses block buffs, which is great for, the heads that are putting buffs, Blight, Mischief, even Wrath himself, so that they don't give, buffs or spread buffs or do anything that enables Torment, for example, right? So block buffs, and then of course decreased attack, which is also good for all the different heads that we're dealing with. The less damage we take, the better, right? In addition to that, she also does increase speed and increase defense with that cleanse, right? She can also use, increased accuracy if you maybe slacked off a little bit in that particular stat, and putting her in the lead role, maybe with a Shamael, for example, can make you guys just go, go, go. Right? There's a lot of flexibility in terms of like how you can approach Torment, but those are three of the biggest ways. I'll give you one more that's a free-to-play option. Basically, everybody, as long as you're progressing, particularly in the content that we're talking about today, Mithrala. She has that A3 that cleanses. She's going to be highly resistant anyway, so it's very likely that she's not going to get locked down. Maybe you can have that A3 prepared so that whenever the team is, doing their rotation, they all take the fear because they're hitting AoEs on the Torment, right? So they're acquiring that fear, right? Well, Mithrala on the top of the turn or at the bottom of the turn, depending on how your rotation is going, right? You can just basically have her, let's cleanse. Everybody's back into play. I will say, though, when you're using cleanse champions that do a one-off and it's on a cooldown, the efficiency of this does go down a little bit, right? Because on the next top of the turn, she may not have it, right? Or the next one following after, it's on a 3-turn cooldown when it's fully booked. So you got to be very careful with those type of situations, when it comes to that. It is an option, though, because, someone like Mithrala does provide benefits in other areas. See my other videos, see what I'm talking about, right? But with all that being said, the name of the game is that you got to be able to approach either playing with it in mind or playing with it out of mind, right? So those different ways that we did it, whether that's Veil or Shamael or a cleanser in some capacity, could help you get through that fight. And to be honest with you, considering how the head of Torment is in general, he's one of the more squishier heads to deal with, kind of like similar to the head of Mischief, although Mischief is still the #1 squishiest, right? You probably don't even need to put too much effort into managing that head outside of taking care of that debuff that you get, right? And if you have that taken care of, he's going to die naturally on his own, just through regular AoE damage in general. Whether you have hexes, you're using a lot of AoE damage, whether that's neck mode, like whatever you have on your team that's doing a lot of splash damage, that Torment head's going to kind of get addressed very, 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 very quickly. So I wouldn't worry about it too much outside of just making sure you can manage yourself around the constraints of fear or removing fear altogether, right? With that being said, I hope this video finds you well. And as always, guys, if you haven't already considered following or subscribing us on this channel, feel free to do so. Click the link below for any additional information. If you want to join our Discord, all that good stuff is down there in our description panel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It helps us with the algorithm. We are almost there at 500 subscribers, so it definitely helps us if you guys want to toss some love that way. Maybe give some more of our videos a watch and you know, support us that way, because we are trying to hit a certain amount of watch hours too as well. It definitely helps as we progress, you know, and I hope to be able to bring more content towards you guys every single day. With that being said, I hope you guys all found this video informative, and always remember, stay ascended.
So it's 100 on the